You're listening to a Rock Candy podcast.
You are now entering Magnified Studios. Welcome.
Coming to you from Magnified Studios, Magnified Pod presents It's Hard to Find a Podcast, covering your favorite indie bands from the 90s Christian alternative scene. Put your tape decks on record. I'm Andrew.
I'm John.
And this is our podcast. And we are covering one of our favorite indie bands.
Hell yeah.
From the 2000s Christian alternative scene.
Yeah, 90s, early 2000s. I think it counts.
Sure. Good enough.
Yeah, I've not been this pumped this season since the beginning when we were talking Pedro. I have
just been a bunch of filler, guys. Just a bunch of bullshit.
No. Just in terms of importance to your boys.
Yeah.
Telling you before we started that I've got just pages of notes for this one. So buckle up, everybody.
This is going to be one of those episodes where John goes on a tear and he's like, yeah, you covered it. Good.
All right. You'll have insight of your own to bring, no doubt. Yeah, I got a lot of talking. Got to do some rapper baby buggy bumpers, some warm ups here. Get loose.
Sure. What I'm doing to get loose is I'm having a little bit of Sauvignon Blanc because, as I've said many times on the pod, summer is the time when I consume most of the white wine that I will consume in a year.
Mm-hmm.
I love a crisp white,
Sure.
which is what they called me in high school. Hey, here comes crisp white.
Crisp white.
Yeah, it's been in the 80s here. I don't know about in
here too
in Palatine. Yeah, it's
last few days
been beautiful.
It's going back down to like the 50s next week, but
I know. It's like, what a beautiful week. I've been inside at work, nowhere near a window, and then it's like, here comes the weekend. Oh, it's gonna rain.
Yeah.
And then get down into the 30s. Cool. Love this.
Yeah, it's been nice to not be working. I gotta say, not to rub it in these last few days, because I'm just like, prepare for the podcast. I can do it outside. It's almost Johnny in a hammock season. I was thinking about getting that hammock out of the garage, but I was like, it's gonna get cold again. But man, I can't wait. Just hole up in that hammock all day long. Bringing some crisp whites my way, maybe. Yeah, you had a Cab Sav last week, Sauv Blanc this week. I mean, what a great life. Well, this week, as I alluded to, I was supposed to be doing a little solo cabin stay right in my cabin core record, up in Eau Claire in Bon Iver country. But instead, got canceled the morning of.
Don't love that for my dude.
No, I was waiting for you. I thought you were pulling up, but
I was trying to find it.
Okay,
I couldn't find it.
I gave a little pause there because I
couldn't find it in time.
I knew you were trying. I appreciate the effort.
John, you're saying that your trip got canceled?
Mm-hmm. There we go. Nailed it.
Yeah.
Yes, the morning that I was supposed to leave for the trip, I got a text saying your trip has been canceled, and I was like, So it turns out the day before had encountered some disastrous water treatment issue with the house. So I guess it's good.
Don't want that.
No, I guess it's good that I'm not the person who that happened to, but
sure.
It is a bummer that they're like, 5 stars everywhere, people loving their stay. And it was like, the day before I was supposed to do mine.
Yeah.
Got canceled. That's okay. I'm going to do it again later.
You don't want to mess around with water shit. Like,
no.
You said not sure exactly what the situation was, but like when I see things about like water parasites and bacteria in water, I'm just like, nah,
I
not worth
think
it.
so. It's like this tiny house, and so I think the like water system was like compost. Like so the I said that weird. I was gonna say compostable, but
Mhm.
like the
Compost.
shower it was compost. The Hardy Puffs is this tiny house is made of compost. But it was like the like toilet instructions were very interesting. It was like move the blue flap forward and sit a little bit further on the seat to make sure that the waist. And I was like, I'm a little intimidated by what's happening here. But it's, yeah. So the water of the shower runs through the whatever. Anyway, that system was compromised, which you don't want. So
No.
it's all good. I will do the trip
Fortunately,
later.
fortunately, nothing else really traumatic has happened this week. So
Yeah. So I was telling Andrew that like it was ultimately good that I stayed home because Jenny got sick. Strep is going around my kid's class. She was like sore throat. Elliot was sick with like just cough and cold and that stuff. And then Milo, my other kid, was also just kind of sniffling and stuff. But then last night just started like screaming and like we had a terrible night of like calling the doctor in the middle of the night trying to figure out what was going on. Discharge started coming out of his ear, was having an ear infection. So
ugh.
like I went and got an antibiotic in the middle of the night, finally got him calmed down, went to sleep in the morning, went to the doctor, and she's like, "Oh yeah, he ruptured his eardrum." Like so the ear infection caused the eardrum to swell up like a balloon and then
Oh
burst. And
my
like
god.
no
Hate
wonder he was
that
yeah,
description.
that's terrible. So imagine
Poor,
being a
poor
little
guy.
kid. I know he just kept going, ouchie, ouchie, which was like breaking my heart.
Yeah. Ugh.
So he was just like not having a good time. And then that was keeping Elliot up because they share a room. So Elliot went into our bed. I slept out of the couch. It was just like, it was a good thing that I stayed here for all this
Yeah.
mess. Anyway, he's on meds now. He's doing okay. But yeah, they said the hole in his eardrum should close up in the 2 to 3 weeks. So I'm like, dear God, I hope so.
Hate that sentence.
Yeah,
I
don't get a hole in your eardrum.
I
That's my
don't, what is
recommendation.
it about kids and ear infections? I got them all the time as a
I did
kid.
too, and Milo did
What's,
too. And he got this surgery when he was like a year and a half to get those tubes put in because he was getting them so much.
oh my gosh.
And since then, he's only gotten like one. So it's weird that he had this like wild one out of nowhere now. But yeah, ear stuff and tubes and rupturing things. It's all a bummer. But anyway, the Lord wanted me here to help with my kid's blood draining out of his ear. So
That, I think that's the takeaway for sure.
definitely. So that's my news this week.
Yeah, man. As long as we busted out this Price is Right losing horn, and we're already talking about some losing situations here.
Yeah,
I think it's about time we get back into some more of the losers lounge.
sounds right.
So, we make this joke about the horny pope, and the one religious leader I didn't expect to have some weird uh sexual misconduct weirdness is the Dalai Lama.
Oh yeah,
What
that
the
was.
fuck?
I don't know. Yeah, you
I,
should explain it, and then I have something to share about it. But
yeah, so there's like, I guess he was doing some sort of event and some kid wanted to like give him a hug or something, and then like the Dalai Lama told him like to give him a kiss, and then he told the kid to suck on his tongue.
suck his tongue.
Yeah. And then
Ugh.
you know and then I saw people describing the apology that was posted on his Twitter as like, just your basic like notes app apology. It's
Yeah.
just like,
Sorry if you were offended that I
yeah,
told the
it's
kid
just
to suck
like,
on my tongue.
yeah, it's like, I'm sorry that people, like this is, I regret it. It's like, do better. This is not okay.
Yeah. I read something that was like sort of defending it, as in like there is a sort of
Tra-
Tibetan tradition of like
tradition.
sticking out your tongue or whatever.
Right. But
I'm like, that feels different from asking a kid to suck on it. I don't
that's
know.
like that. I mean, but that's like saying, in the United States we have a tradition of like extending our hand to shake someone's hand. And it's
Right.
like,
And
and
then
then like
licking it.
shoving it down someone's pants. It's like
Yeah.
that's not.
No. And then it was like, his English isn't great. So like maybe he didn't mean to say that exactly. I'm like, I
Come
don't know. I
on.
don't really buy any of this.
No,
So I
no.
don't know. Dalai Lama, you're in the doghouse.
Yeah,
Um,
I hate it. I hate it so much. And what is the kid like? Even if it's supposed to be like a joke, it's like,
right.
what I don't joke about, like sexual interactions
Right.
with
Yeah.
children. That's
Right.
not that's not. I
No.
don't know, maybe that's the Dalai Lama's humor, that he's just like,
He's just a
LOL.
classic troller, that guy.
Yeah,
Um,
just you know, big big bummer.
yeah, I don't
And
know what the fuck's going on there, but
yeah.
leave the Dalai Lama's tongue at your mouth, everyone, even if he tells you otherwise.
Yep.
Another religious leader had some problems this week from your perspective.
Yeah.
was, was
So
that good? A good leader?
sure, good enough. Good enough. Um
Maybe less surprising in this case,
yeah,
but
less surprising from, the I don't know if you want to call him a neo Calvinist or
sure.
new Calvinist or whatever you want to call him. But this tweet that he sent out, it that said, to truly become Christians, we must also repent of the reasons we ever did anything right, because even those reasons are tainted.
Hmm.
What a miserable existence this
Yeah.
this theology is.
Yeah.
To exist in a world where you're never good enough, the foundation of your understanding of trying to live a moral or ethical life, you're a disaster, and you're totally depraved, and you're a fuck up no matter what you do.
Yeah.
And so, like, to truly become Christian in his mind means to just perpetually be in a cycle of self-hatred, I would call it. They would probably
Hmm.
call it repentance.
Right.
But
Yeah.
if every single aspect of your life, you're just sizing up where you fall short,
Yeah.
even a good thing, because it's tainted somehow. And this is the kind of stuff, as I said in my Instagram post, that made me hate myself as a kid, that
Yeah.
I just never felt like I was good enough. I was a sinner. I couldn't stop, and I was just constantly caught in this cycle of like unsure if I was doing the right thing or if I was sinning, or I don't want to live that life anymore. And giving up so much of that, I think, was a starting place for me to kind of work through how I
Hmm.
see myself and how I think about myself. But kind of going off of what I talked about in a previous episode about that TikTok about that guy who's like praying for this person to give up
Right.
their sexual desires, and it's like it's you. And
Right.
it bums me out that people would move through their life feeling just not good about anything they do, even if it's
Right.
objectively like a good thing that they did. Because, and like, he doesn't, I don't know, like, I'd like to see some more about what he thinks is what he means by something's tainted. That
Sure.
I don't know, maybe he has weird ass motivations for stuff that he does, but
Right.
I
Yeah.
don't know.
This
That's
is
a
like what I always think about when like um you know fill in the blank conservatives or evangelicals or whomever sort of make like a bad faith argument about
right.
all people where
Yes.
I'm like, you're showing your ass a little by being like,
Yeah.
well, we're all terrible because none of us want to make decisions to actually help people. We're only doing that because we're virtue signaling or whatever. And I'm just like, that really bums me out that there's not like room in your understanding of the world that like people, are either inherently good or are capable of doing good things for the sake of goodness and like trying to be a good person and help other people without any religious motivation behind it. So
Right.
I don't know. I get bummed out by the idea of like you can't, it's not in your capacity to like understand that we might actually have pure good motivations for the things that we do. And B, that like, yeah, it's just so like lacking in any grace of any kind. And I don't know. I can remember like as a person in my early 20s being exposed to more people's faith experiences that like, oh, I had this notion that like to be Christian meant just a life of just failure because you're never going to be able to do what you're supposed to do as a Christ follower. And friends being like, well, that doesn't seem very grace centered, which the gospel is centered in grace. And if you are free to serve and love others, then why do you have it in your head that like you must constantly be failing? Like instead of seeing it, I'll never be able to live up to it. Can't you see it in the like, but you've been freed to do these good things and God finds you inherently good. And I don't know. I feel like I really got a moment of clarity with that where I'm like, oh, I've been like bumming myself out for years by like trapping you into this narrow view of like you're bad and you're always going to be bad. And I don't know. It's like there's more room. There's so much more room for goodness than that narrow thinking puts forth.
You're saying that the Christian right is not looking at things with a lot of nuance.
It is weird.
That is
because that's unlike them.
It's so unusual.
I know.
You know, it's like that stupid. You talk about bad faith arguments when you hear like you know, how do you have any sense of morality without God? Like,
right.
If you're not a Christian, like, what's stopping you from going out and raping and murdering? It's like that's.
Ooh.
That talk about showing your ass.
Right.
Like,
we just got a little window into your brain.
Yeah. It's like, that's what your first thought is.
Right. Yeah.
That's
not
a weird take.
Yeah. I think, you know, this is true for everyone, but those people's religious experiences are molded around perhaps the understanding first that we are all like bad to begin with. You know what I mean?
Right.
And then you form your faith practice around that inherent belief. Like everybody's out to get you, you're out to get everybody else. It's a dog eat dog world versus just like, what if we as people start from like a starting position of like we want to help other people and maybe we don't always pull it off. But anyway, Tim Keller, don't come on the pod. Now that sound could apply to some of a band we've talked about a fair amount on the pod over the years in terms of some of their output, notoriously including one album we've brought up many times. But Metallica, Andrew, has a new album out, and we were talking about this off mic. I think on the whole, so as we're recording, it comes out tomorrow. When this episode drops, it will already be out. So I'll be curious to hear folks' thoughts. But like, on the whole, I think these 4 songs that they've released are like, they go pretty hard. I'm kind of into the vibe. I think I said 2 of the 4 I like, and the other 2 I'm kind of lukewarm on. But I don't know. I like that they are just like, I mean, there's no ballads to be had on this album. Not that Metallica can't throw down with a good ballad, but like they're going hard and fast, and it sounds pretty good.
A little
and I
thrashy
like this.
again.
A little thrashy, into it.
I was telling you that last night they played on Jimmy Kimmel, and they played the full version of Master of Puppets.
Hell yeah!
And they shredded, and you know, I was impressed with some of the minor adjustments that they did to the song. And Lars was getting very busy and playful on the kit.
Okay, all right, all right, cool.
He's objectively the worst.
Yeah, he's not a great figure.
No, he's
but a good drummer.
I would say like he's. People give him a lot of shit for his drumming. That you can find lots of videos of him playing in like Metallica band practice, and he's just like fucking up and getting off time, and like they're like, the other guys are playing and they're like looking at him, and he's just like, so I don't know.
Yeah. Well, the others are like virtuosos, and he's he's got a sound.
He's got a sound. He's got a style. He's one of those drummers that you're like, oh, I know this.
Right.
You can pick him up by his style. So yeah, I'm interested to see. The last handful of albums have been, and that famously terrible album that they did with was it with Lou Reed?
Oh yeah, right. I forgot about that.
Lulu, I think is what it was called.
Yeah.
That like that came out like over 10 years ago that like everybody hated.
Yeah. Oh, forgot all about that.
Yeah. So we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll have to get everybody else's thoughts.
Yeah. I have decent hopes for it. And they're a band I've never seen live. I've never been like way into them, but I've always liked them. And I'm like, I should probably see them. They're not young guys anymore, so maybe it's time.
Yeah. I think there's a handful of bands that, we've had this conversation a number of times, like, what are the bands that you want to see before it's too late?
Yeah.
And I guess I never really think about Metallica.
No, they've got a long way to go still, but
it's never been like one of those situations where I'm like, lots of things, because they've played, they've been in the Twin Cities in recent years, and I'm not just like dying to go, because I'm typically not a like big stadium kind of arena concert goer.
Yeah.
And you're not going to see, most people's Metallica experience is not going to be at the Turf Club or the Fine Line or like 7th Street.
If they put some cool outdoor show, or like they had some good opener I was excited about, I could go to that. And Paul Simon on my list for a long time, and I finally saw him, I don't know, whenever that last record came out. I guess that was a while ago, but that was great. And he just announced today as we're recording that he's got a new album coming out next month, which is pretty cool. He's another dude who's releasing, I think, really great albums very late into his career. And a band comparable to Paul Simon in a lot of ways, I guess you could say, is Babymetal. I just saw today that Babymetal is touring, which I watched that like chocolate video like once every couple months or so. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I do not.
You know the band I'm talking about?
I do.
Okay, so they have a song that's like "Gimme Chocolate" or something, and it's like just kind of gibberish, like da 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 you. And their whole thing is like, the super hard thrashy sort of like verses, and then these really poppy like sheen choruses.
Okay.
And these videos of them in like Japan playing these huge stadiums, I'm like, this looks so fucking fun. And I watched like a full concert of them playing at the Aragon in Chicago, and I was like, man, next time they come, I might have to go see fucking Babymetal. And they're playing with Death Clock.
Oh, like, shit, that rules.
Which do they like tour? Is that a thing? I missed out.
Yes, they've done some shows.
So did they project like the animated band on a screen or something?
I think so. But they're on stage. The dudes are on stage. I think they're maybe kind of in the shadows or something. But like,
okay, but Death Clock and Babymetal together might be enough, and they're coming to Minneapolis and Chicago for what it's worth. So
this is I thought you were gonna say "Give me pizza."
That's
Give me
right.
pizza.
One super giant pizza, plain, nothing on it, and I'd like that delivered as soon as possible.
Girls, your pizza's here.
Thank you.
This is a jam. Olsen Twins coming in with a bunch of
guys, we
takeout.
cleaned out the refrigerator. I think we're just about ready to build the perfect pizza. Give me pizza!
Hell yeah.
P-I-Z-Z-A.
It's a jam.
P-I-Z-Z-A. Now I'm feeling kind of hungry. We gotta make a
kind of a jam. Can you do me a favor
The slowed down version?
Yes, look up the slowed down version, please.
Give me pizza.
I'd have to fast forward a little.
Okay, guys, give me pizza.
Yeah.
P-I-C-C-A.
Give me pizza.
Did I happen to say
The rules.
pizza?
It's a jam. It
This
sounds
is-
like some like early 90s like Diggable Planets or something. It's like I'm down with this.
This slowed down version is bordering on Tom Waits. if you just take the vocals out,
I want pizza.
Yeah.
Pizza. Hey, are you ready to play? Are you ready to play? Give me pizza. Pizza.
Okay, last thing, just throw on a little gimme chocolate so that the people can hear a little of this. This is like we normally, skirt that copyright line. This is like the kind of thing that's really getting people's attention. But just a little slice of this thing.
well, I have heard this.
I mean, it's pretty fun, right?
Yeah, that's kind of rules.
You tell me you wouldn't have a good time watching it live?
I have a great time. How dare
I'm
you?
just talking to the universe. I mean, everyone
Oh,
wants
sure.
to experience that live, right? So anyway, see you all there. All right, we've covered Babymetal, Metallica, Tim Keller, the Dalai Lama. Anything else we want to run down in our week of pop culture updates?
I think we've covered all the
We
important.
covered
stuff.
it. Yeah, I think we got it.
Yeah, I think we covered it.
I think we got
Did I happen to say?
Give me pizza.
What a jam. Olsen Twins make a new album. That's what I'm saying.
Are you ready to play?
Well, I'm ready to play in the sense that I'm ready to start talking about this week's album and this week's band.
Ooh, talking about our boys Anathallo, my dude.
That's right. Should we take a little break and then come back and get into this floating world?
Think we should, man. Let's do it.
Hey guys, my name is Matt Langston. I am a music producer, a mix engineer, and an avid unicorn enthusiast. And I would like to invite you over to my podcast, 11D Life. On 11D Life, we get to talk to your favorite artists, producers, and creators about what makes them tick. We take deep dives into where they get their juiciest inspirations from and how they keep from being cynical about all of it. We even get to pull back the curtain on my band, 11D7, and share some fun insider tips and tricks for our fellow bandmates and creators out there. So be sure to check out 11D Life right here on the Rock Candy Podcast Network and wherever you get your favorite shows.
We're back.
Fuck. I'm so excited to talk about this.
John, we're talking Anathallo, talking Floating
Yes.
World.
Yes.
We have brought our glockenspiels with us for this
Yeah.
episode.
Nothing like taking notes on Anathallo to really test my ability to spell glockenspiel repeatedly in my notes.
So we got our glockenspiels. We got our just like 20 feet of chain.
Maybe some balloons to pop.
We got some. We got our like wooden floorboard stages for the
Hell yeah.
stomping.
Oh man, what a great time!
Yeah, we're good.
Yeah, I was telling you this before we started recording, but I don't think I've been this hyped this season to talk about a band since we started out with Pedro, where I also just had endless amounts of notes on my connection to those albums, and we're right back right back there with this band these couple weeks for me, baby. This is a band that is very important to both of us, that we have some personal connections to. And I don't know, we've talked about this season we're in a niche within a niche. We're probably going even nichier this time. I don't know. I'm curious to see the extent to which Anathallo resonates for other folks, or if they have a similar experience,
and how they permeated this subculture of Christian music. But because we had people, the Patreon punks in our Discord.
Yeah,
we're talking about how I can't remember who it was that said they saw them like 20 times, or just saw them.
I think
bunch.
our dude Aaron Quillen.
Sure, yeah, that sounds right.
Very into them. We've had several folks in the Discord be like, "Oh, we're really pumped to talk on Othello." So,
right,
I think the pocket of people who are into them are very into them. I don't know that they sort of, I don't know. It's weird because, like, I was going to say broke through, but I think in some ways this is like one of the more commercial bands we've actually covered this season. They had a level of success that a lot of the bands we talked about have not. Let's say Morello's Forest was not thrown down on American Express and Vicks commercials.
I do have that Vicks commercial
Perfect.
Locked and loaded.
I'm glad. And yeah, they were signed to a label that distributed their album through Sony BMG. So like they had, we'll get into it, but they had success. But weirdly, kind of as you were alluding to, like they definitely very much came out of the Christian world, but were never like, it's that weird tension of like, I think this is some of the most Christian songwriting we've covered on the podcast in terms of its sort of like sophistication and interesting wrestling with faith themes, but it's like very literary and maybe like challenging for certain people and not super clear. So they were certainly never sort of evangelical in their structure of songwriting and thematics and stuff like that, even though they very much were always maybe more Christian in their songwriting than a lot of other bands from this world. So yeah, they kind of have an interesting spot among like, they played with like Sufjan, and I think of them sort of being more in that sort of moment in the 2000s of like these bands that sort of skirted the line between those worlds. But yes, been very excited to cover them. So I hope people are into this, even if they don't know them, if they hear some of this and are excited to give them more of a chance. Because one thing I'll say up top is like, it's going to kind of be impossible to go through these songs in the way that we normally do, where most of the bands that we cover, it's like verse, chorus, verse, bridge. Hey, can you play the bridge on this one? Yeah. There's almost no songs that go by that structure on this album.
And a lot of them are like 5 or 6 minutes long.
Yeah, they're long. They have like many movements within the songs. They change dramatically. So you might hear a minute or two and have a very different sense of where the song will go by minute 6 or whatever. Yeah. So yeah, I'm just going to be doing a lot of like, let's just hear a little bit of this part and then a little bit of this part.
Yep.
So I would just say, if you like these snippets that we get to play on the pod, like please go check out the full albums for the experience of like really the journey that these songs take you on all of the records of theirs. But I'll just say, up top, personally, this is my favorite album of theirs. And it's probably, it's one of my favorite albums we've ever talked about on the podcast. I think that's fair to say. So our plan is to cover Floating World this week, Canopy Glow next week, which are their two sort of major national releases, and then talk about the EP Holiday at the Sea on the Patreon next week, which also means a lot to both of us. And I think was one of their EPs that sort of broke through.
Yeah. Yes. And the thing, John, that little update on Holiday at the Sea, that EP is not on streaming.
Right.
You cannot buy the MP3s anywhere. None of us, even though we love this EP, none of us can seem to locate any of the songs.
Yeah. I have a CD somewhere in a box, but that's not even really going to help us out right
now. I know. And I texted my brother today and was like, do you have any idea where this is? And he's like, it's one of those things I lost years ago that I haven't been able to find. And but anyway, and I was telling you that I've been trying to find a used copy on Discogs, but anytime I find one, it's like, this is shipping from Japan. And I'm like,
right.
God damn it. But anyway, I saw there's a copy for sale in the UK.
Okay.
And I emailed the dude today and I said, hey, maybe a weird request, but if I buy this CD, would you be able to rip it and send me the MP3s before you mail it to me?
Mm-hmm.
So this guy is going to do just that.
Nice.
So we will have some high quality versions of those songs.
Perfect.
As opposed to the questionable YouTube versions that are out there, which is the only thing I've been able to use to listen to. And they're fine, but considering how much it means to us, we don't want to like do it a disservice, but so that will be for next week's Patreon. And
awesome.
So, but you also like, next week we're gonna have a guest on, and
we are indeed.
And you were like, "Do you have these?"
Yeah, his answer was the same as the rest of us, which is like, I got to go check an old hard drive, and I probably have it somewhere. Which is so weird. It's so like, to think that we're all like, "Oh man, this EP rules," and like none of us have it. Yeah. Well, yes. Stay on the lookout for that Patreon episode. But I would also encourage folks, if the only thing you can find is Holiday at the Sea on YouTube, go check that out because it's just a really great collection of 3 songs, but they're all big, epic, long songs also. But these 2 records, Floating World and Canopy Glow, are on streaming platforms, easily findable. Floating World wasn't for a while, and definitely go check those out.
You'll see on Spotify that it says 2021.
Right.
Which is not when the album came out.
No. So let's boost those numbers, folks. Go give the Anathallo bump. But to give some context to the band, Anathallo formed in 2000 in Mount Pleasant, Michigan. They would later move to Chicago. The name comes from the Greek word meaning to renew, refresh, or bloom again. And that is certainly a consistent theme across a lot of their work. Lots of rich theological and literary thematic text to unpack in their lyrics. I will do our best, but there's a lot. And also just really complex musically, trying to think of how to describe them. I think Baroque is a word that comes to mind, like orchestral. I mean, they were certainly part of what was somewhat of like a wave of orchestral indie rock in the 2000s, like again, Sufjan, Arcade Fire, Vampire Weekend. There's probably more, and that kind of sells short what they did. It was very theatrical.
Yes,
there were a lot of math rock elements, but they were all multi-instrumentalists. Most of the time there were 7 or 8 folks in the band, and the songs are really complex. There's more movements within songs than there are verse, chorus, verse structures to them. So there's a lot to, it's like daunting in a way that we've talked about some artists being daunting, just in terms of like, I'm such a fan of them in terms of the sophistication of their musicianship and their lyricism that I'm like, I hope I even can like touch on this, but I'm not daunted in the same way because it like means so much to me. So it feels like fun to dive in, even if I'm like, look, I'm only kind of scratching the surface of what these folks are capable of.
And I feel like this will be the week where I say all of my cringy things that I don't want to be embarrassing about when we have a guest on next week. Because
like, oh my God, so good.
I know it feels embarrassing to do that to somebody, especially to somebody who like, this is like very much far in their past at this point. And to have no chill, because neither of us had chill back in the day. And it's like, let's like try and be adults and be like,
I'm an adult.
Hey, Danny, welcome to the real world, jackass.
Yeah, that's how I always greet him. Yes, we should say Danny Bracken, a longtime member of the band, and certainly a member for both of these records, was the guitar player and went to college with us and was buddies with us, and is a great dude. And I knew him before I knew Anathallo, but I certainly had no chill in the Anathallo era in my interactions with him. But he was always very nice about it. But I believe there are only 3 constant members from the inception of the band the whole way through. And I think that was Matt Joint. Mm-hmm. So he's on lead vocals and guitar and piano, Brett Wallen on trombone and percussion, and Seth Walker on bass. But like I said, they usually had 7 or 8 members. Everybody sang backing vocals and played percussion pretty much. They were all multi-instrumentalists and doing different instruments and hand claps and stomping and background vocals on pretty much every song. And you mentioned this, but the live experience was a major aspect of who they were as a band.
Yeah, you can't separate. I feel this is not to diminish the albums, but I feel like the primary way to have experienced Anathallo was live.
Yeah.
And again, I'm not trying to take away from the recordings, which are beautiful, but it's a completely different and all encompassing and overwhelming experience. Like the way you've described like seeing Weezer, you're just like, this is like, I could have just put on the Blue album and it was like, not as, there's like no excitement. It was just sort of like going through the motions. This experience to me, even when I was still a Christian, I called it a religious experience. It felt like a religious experience.
Yeah.
It felt overwhelming. It felt awe-inspiring. It felt captivating and joyful. Like, and this is all the stuff that I would not want to say to Danny because I'd be embarrassed. But like, it's genuine. I have some very concrete memories of like a show that I saw at North Park. But before we get to that, John, I think I need to ask you a question. And it's, when did you first hear of Anathallo?
Well, you and I and Danny worked together on our campus faith-based social justice magazine.
Talking hands-on, bro?
Talking hands-on magazine.
Talking handsonmag.org?
That's right. I wish it still existed. It does not. Yeah. Danny was our designer, and he was a great designer and pulled off all kinds of cool stuff for us all the time. But spent many, many long hours together in the basement of this dorm where the offices were, where we put together the magazine. And we always did it this way, where like when the issue, in the early days we had a print edition, but that eventually just became online, and we'd basically stay up the whole night before the like drop date of when the issue would go live of the magazine. And that usually meant I was getting Danny all the like copy for articles, at like midnight or whatever. And so we were designing and putting stuff into the computers. Putting stuff into the computers sounds like an old person thing to say. Late into the night.
How do
And that started I don't know, sophomore year. So what's that, like 2002-ish? And as I was getting to know Danny, I got to know that he was in this band, Anathallo. And I really think that was the first time I'd ever heard of them. And the more that I got to know Danny and the more that I got to know the band, I was kind of like, this is actually a pretty big deal band. So I think that would have been around Sparrows coming out, I'm pretty sure. And then I think they were putting out hymns. So those are both EPs of theirs. Around the time that they came to North Park and played a show there while we were all students there. And I remember doing an article on them for the paper.
Was this the show that was like upstairs in like the art
Yes.
building?
Yeah, Hanson Hall.
That is my memory of like my most concrete
Yeah.
show experience of them, and just
Yeah.
like
So cool.
feeling super overwhelmed
Yeah.
at that show.
Yeah. It was amazing. So by the time they came to campus, I was like very pumped for them and knew about them. And that
Yeah.
would have been in like 03, 04. So that's around the time I got way into them. And then from then on, I was just like seeing them every chance I could. Was that more or less the same for you?
Well, the first time I saw them was not that show. It was, if I'm remembering correctly, I think I was introduced to them by John Ecker.
Okay, that sounds right.
He had invited me. He's like wanting to go to this show, to see them. I hadn't heard of them at this point.
Mhm.
And it was at some small place in Lombard, Illinois.
Okay.
And so it was a small room too. And you got like 7 or 8 members of a band.
Yeah.
And so keep in mind, this was early 2000s.
Mhm.
And you're seeing this band of a bunch of people. They're pulling out horns. And I remember hearing somebody say to their friends, like, is this a ska band?
Right. Yeah.
So, because this is like not too many years after like the big ska boom.
Right.
And so like seeing like 7 or 8 people pulling out like a trombone and you're just like, what's going
What are
on
we
here?
getting into?
What are we
Yeah,
getting into? And so that was my first experience. And I think this was around Holiday at the Sea
Mhm.
era, because when did that come out? That was
was
that
2003. So yeah, I guess that would have been around the same time.
around the same time. So because I feel like it wasn't too long after that it was that Hanson Hall show.
Right. Yeah, that would have been right around the same time. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was like immediately smitten, because it was something that like I had never heard before.
Yeah,
I'd
totally.
not seen or heard or experienced that level of putting your entire body literally into the rhythm and the intensity of how they were all like screaming and singing, and like I was just like, oh my God, this is not like anything I've ever witnessed live.
Yeah, there were lots of drums, big bass drums that, if I recall correctly, they'd like reused from finding in dumpsters and just like pounding on these giant shitty beaten drums. Yeah,
beating the shit out of them, just like
really
going hard,
beating the drums. Lots of horns, as you mentioned, bells, glockenspiel, and mallets. But yeah, there would be like 4 people on like 2 giant bass drums or toms, doing these elaborate like percussive rhythms together. There'd be another few people doing these hand claps and stomping rhythms together, and they were all just shouting at the top of their lungs, like you were saying, but in a like very melodious way. And their songs really, they all, like I said, are kind of these movements of like there'd be sort of like dark atonal passages that moved into like these ecstatic release elements of the songs, that kind of like these transcendent moments, which I think is what you're alluding to, of people. Some people in the Discord were calling them like worshipful experiences. You're talking about a religious experience. One of the like comparable things I can think of seeing Sigur Rós live, like around the same time, and just being so blown away by the like transcendent feeling of it. And like I think Anathallo captures that same feeling of just like I'm like witnessing something live that's like moving me with the power of its musicality and these people in front of me doing this thing. And I don't know, it's kind of hard to describe, but I do think
visceral is another word I would say.
Very visceral and just fun. Like it wasn't like you came away being like, these hipsters, it's so like arty. there was art to it, but it was like it had the fun of like a hardcore show or something, because everybody was like sweaty and like the shows were just always such a good time. So I think you left just feeling on a high of like seeing these songs performed live. They do like these dance movements together sometimes. Like we said, the percussion included, like, I remember balloons popping, like in rhythm. They'd bring out these balloons and pop them. They'd tear pages out of books to like the beat. There was just like, I don't know, all these really impressive syncopated percussion things they do in unison together. And yeah, multiple people drumming or clapping or doing all these things just exactly in sync, which is always impressive. But yeah, they self-released the album Luminescence in the Atlas position in 2001, and that sort of set the tone for them, where it was like the packaging was handcrafted by the band with this like 20-page booklet that accompanied it. Then they released the album Sparrows, which is largely based on biblical themes, on Salah Records in 2002. And then, as we were saying, in 2003, they released the EP Holiday at the Sea on Salah as well. And Holiday at the Sea, we'll get into this, but that title comes from a C.S. Lewis quote. And the packaging on the first pressing included a bag with dirt and seeds to plant, which is just like awesome and very Anathallo. And then in 2004, they released the EP Hymns on Salah, which was all reinterpretations of classic hymns. But as we said, their most well-known records were the nationally released ones, Floating World and Can It Be Glow. Floating World was initially self-released in 2006, and then they signed with the label Network, and it was re-released in 2007 with wider distribution through Sony BMG. Can It Be Glow was released in 2008 on the indie label Anticon. And then they went on hiatus in 2009 and never reunited. But as we were saying, they were kind of a band that crossed over, in the sense that they came out of playing Cornerstone for years and that whole scene, but went on to play Lollapalooza and Coachella and opened for Sufjan Stevens and went on world tours. And
Andrew Dost went on to be a founding member of Fun.
Indeed.
Like it's, I can't ever fault anybody for moving on from a band and doing something different.
Right.
But I will say, like, since they broke up, we've had COVID, we had Trump, I think it's I think it's time for them to reunite and kind of write this timeline.
I would really love that, man.
Just saying that, like, ever since they broke up, things have kind of gone to shit.
It's gone downhill, yeah.
So.
Coincidence? You be the judge. But yeah, Andrew Dost in the band for nearly the entire run. But yes, went on to co-found Fun with Jack Antonoff, who has basically reshaped pop music over the last decade or so through his production work. So that's just a pretty wild direct connection. And I remember I saw Anathallo open for Fun before Fun blew up and was huge. But just needless to say, they've had connections to a lot of, we mentioned several of the songs on this record were used in big time commercial campaigns that brought them some wider recognition. But yeah, I mean, they were explicitly Christian early on in terms of what we're talking about with like Hymns and Sparrows. Although, as we said, they were always more literary, I think, in their biblical allusions and things like that, never proselytizing. And there were certainly always faith elements to their lyrics and themes throughout everything they did. That never went away, even if it maybe became a little less obvious on the surface, perhaps. But they straddled those worlds in a really interesting and unique way, I think. So to talk about this record, as we said, self-released February 25th, 2006, then re-released by Sony BMG on Network Records on January 28th, 2007. It was recorded at home, the liner notes say, by the band and Glenn Hills, who doesn't have any other credits. The drums and electric guitars were recorded at Glow in the Dark Studios in Atlanta by Matt Goldman, who has a ton of production and engineering credits that we'd be familiar with. Under Oath, Luxury, Copeland, Chariot, Pacifico, Anberlin. So some good cred there. It was mastered at Rodney Mills Master House in Atlanta. It's credited to being written and performed by Matt, Brett, Seth, Danny, Andrew, and then folks we haven't mentioned, Nathan Sandberg, Joel Thiel, and then additional musicians on the record, Erica Foreman and Jeremiah Johnson, both would go on to join the band, Glenn Hills, and then Chris Hatfield, Brian Sears, Morgan Stewart, and Israel Vasquez. Did you know Israel at all?
I don't
Random
think,
question.
I don't think so.
He was a good friend of Danny's, and I crossed paths with him a few times. Good dude. But anyway, apparently he did some additional musician work on the record. And we should mention for Floating World, the design is such a cool element of it. It was designed by Greg Leppert, and it was never pressed on vinyl, which is a tragedy. But the CD booklet was this intricately laser cut artwork that was like, it laser cutted all these like paper cut designs. There was a die cut cardboard cover, and then under that would be like colored paper, but it was just like these really intricate cutouts, and I would like get smushed in my CDs, and I would be like, oh no, the integrity of the little like folds are like being compromised. So I tried to keep it the folds integrity. So I know for a fact that this is still one of the CDs that I kept in a box in my laundry room, which I could find, because I'm like, I never want to get rid of this one. It's just so cool. And it's this artwork of like roots and wind blowing and flowers blooming and a dead dog in the center who plays a central role of the record. And that artwork and that theme of this record is largely about resurrection, I would say. It's a concept album in a lot of ways, with a lot of the songs built around this Japanese folktale, which we'll get into. And the term floating world itself is apparently a translation of the Japanese term describing urban culture in the Edo period of Japan in the 17th and 18th centuries, particularly the pleasure-seeking aspects of urban culture at the time. So I'm not sure that that's the exact meaning here, but it is about old Japanese stories, so it's relevant, I think. But yeah, most of the stories here seem to be in the voice of like characters from tales, and there's obvious like biblical passages here, but there's also largely Japanese folktales and songs and Japanese translations of Bible passages.
Yes. Which means I will also try and not butcher some of the song titles.
Yeah, we'll do our best. I believe that came from Matt spending some time in Japan. I can't remember the exact context of this, but I think that's the case. And many of the songs sort of bleed into each other. It kind of feels like one comprehensive concept album. As you said, most of the songs are around 6 minutes long. They all kind of have like, for the most part, like a section of tumult and heaviness, and then give way to this, like, as I was saying, almost like euphoric seeming section. So all the songs kind of take you on a journey. It feels like every song could basically be like a college class worth of analysis. And so can't do it all, but I'm going to try. And I don't know. Like I said, choosing what parts to play will be really hard, because I just want to play every part of every song because they change so much and they're all so good. So yes, I do my little rating system of yellow songs being the ones that I love. And every single song here is yellow for me. There's nothing I'm lukewarm about. I love it all. So I'll do my best to try to control myself to not playing all 6 minutes of every song, but I do have some notes about like, I got to hear this part. So
yes. What do you think? I think
it's time to float.
All right, let's grab some balloons. We'll start floating.
That's
right. This opening track, it's a short one.
Yes.
Ame?
I believe so.
Ame? A-M-E.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
So what you got is just percussion and organ. Instrumental. Kind of increases in intensity along the way. That's about half of it.
Yeah. It sort of evokes like a rainstorm.
Yes, I wrote the same thing in my notes. Yeah, it's like you said, just under a minute. It's, this growing percussion that starts out like independent beats and then kind of grows in intensity until it's just sort of inundated with it, which does, feel like a rainstorm or something. I think it's a really cool mood setting way to open the record. It's like, it's pretty, but it's kind of eerie and foreboding, and we're a little bit like, oh, what are we getting here? So Into it.
I'm into it as well. Track 2, Gennesaret, going out over 30,000 fathoms of water.
My God. I'm getting chills. So good.
Hard, I stood on the bottom, careless, tiptoes, splintering wood, waterlogging, break up, come back together, Gennesaret.
It's good.
It's so good. That sort of doomy, foreboding sound of piano in the background during that sort of transition to the next verse.
Yeah.
It's
so cool.
Yeah, it does give you a sense of, I don't know, I guess going from the beginning and then sort of transitioning into this, a song about 30,000 fathoms of water. What do you make of the song?
Well, a couple things. I mean, you might hear that and think, oh, this is a sort of chill, dark song, but we'll have to hear some other parts, because it's these tense moments of minor chords that then like break way into major chords, and you feel like the clouds parting all of a sudden. And then it kind of goes back into moody and contemplative and ends there. But Gennesaret was a region along the Sea of Galilee that had rich soil, soil being a theme of this record, and I'd say a fair amount of Anathallo stuff. And it's where Jesus and the disciples landed after he walked on water. I think there's clearly some references to that happening here. I don't know exactly what's happening, but, there are lines like he'd thrown his net over us, the fishers of men idea.
Right.
Clearly some Jesus and water themes, even if I don't exactly know the meaning. But I feel like the idea of opening with Gennesaret, we're talking about water, the raindrops in the opening. It's this sort of, I think there are themes on the record of like faith and having faith in the face of sort of seeming darkness, and like the story of Jesus walking on the water and telling Peter to walk and him not doing it, and then them landing, and that's where everybody was asking Jesus to touch his cloak and stuff. It feels very like I don't know, being faced with these sort of like overwhelming ideas, and faith in what Jesus was offering folks being the thing that sort of carried through. And I think you can apply that theme to sort of where it goes with this Japanese folktale in certain ways. So I think it's an interesting way to open the record by invoking directly a sort of gospel passage, even though, like I said, you wouldn't really know any of that from just looking at the lyrics. And I only know what Gennesaret is by like looking it up a long time ago and seeing like, oh, sea of Galilee, that all makes sense. So I don't know. What do you think?
I think some of the other songs that have a more a connection to one of the folk tales that we're talking about, this one maybe not so much.
Sure. It's all very poetic, and it's not like clear what he's saying. I think even as they are often characters. I think there's like times when they're taking this larger story and then applying it on a more sort of personal level. So I don't know. Like I said, you could pour over this stuff a lot and find a lot here, and I like that about it. But what I want to hear of is some da do 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 da do. There's some cool stuff that happens around the 3-minute mark. There's like this tense moment that breaks into sort of the clouds parting that I'd like to hear.
After the momentary weird space of expectancy, when you wake, when you open up your eyes.
So good.
When you expect to see the same thing that you've seen first.
I just love the this foreboding, and then all of a sudden it gives way to like warm guitar strum, and you're just like, oh, and these
very
like
bright sounding,
right, all these harmonized chorus of vocals coming in. Like, it's just, I don't know, I think I agree, it doesn't there are other songs that connect for me musically and thematically more as the album goes on, but I think it's a really great opening, like, full song.
I agree.
This one I like even more.
Yep.
So never mind.
Hoodwink.
Someday they will build monuments for us. People like me walk out the door before you out into the streets of countries. If I'm ready to go, how could I let you throw in delight, in oh, see, all things are so bright and spiritual. These seeds are growing in extraordinary colors. I'm convinced, even I believe that you've grown something. It's kids delight. Don't you worry about me.
This is my number 3.
That's my number 2.
Okay.
Yeah, the song
rules.
rules so much. Those foot stomps and hand claps, come on. Like, we were doing it right along with them. There was a time when I could do it perfectly in sync with them when when I was seeing them live. A little less consistent these days, but that was another like transcendent moment from their live show. Is just like watching that part.
Matt's voice sounds unbelievable in this song.
Cool. It's so cool. I
His
love how
vibrato is so good.
Yeah.
He's like, I think the closest thing I can compare some of his singing style to is Bjork.
I love that.
I think he's got some like very dramatic and like I don't really know how else to describe the comparison. I don't even know how to describe Bjork's voice.
Right.
But like sort of like this dramatic histrionics and like sort of mellow, and then like, you know, this sharp like I don't know. It's I don't have the words to describe it, but
I think it's a good comparison because I just don't have a brain that's like artistic enough to see the kinds of phrases that a Bjork or a Matt Joint writes and decide to vocally perform it in the way that they choose to, which is like, this isn't following anything except their brain, like the rhythms that are inside of them. And I'd be like, how did you come up with to phrase it that way? Like musically. But yeah, no, I think that's great. And the song just goes so many different places. I tried to count the different movements within the song, and I think there are 15. This is one of the longer ones. What is this one?
548.
Okay, so not even as long as others, but it's just like it really goes on a journey, and like some of the songs kind of go back around musically, thematically to stuff that, you know, they'll return to something, and this one just kind of like keeps going different places. Another transcendent moment for me is the build out of darkness into light at around 3:15, and then it builds even more to an even more euphoric moment from like 3:50 to 4. So maybe we hear about like 3:50, that section. It's so good.
So good.
Man. I don't have anything more to say than just how good is that. But that soaring guitar, those pounding toms, it just, man, I don't know. Euphoric is the word I keep coming back to, but it's just like, I feel like they'll come out of this sort of dark passage of a song and go to a place where I'm like, oh wow, that feels like really exciting. And then like, oh, they're even gonna go on top of that with like an even more exciting movement after that. And the song is just full of those for me. Thematically, so apparently this opening quote says, "So never mind, someday they will build monuments for us," is based on a quote by Adolf Eichmann, the planner of the Nazi gas chambers.
This is this is what I'm seeing as attributed, and I'm trying to like
verify that.
I'm trying.
There's not really a direct quote, and that's not something that's from the liner notes. That's just sort of speculation online. But what I did find was that this idea of little Eichmanns came to be a term meaning people whose actions may seem relatively harmless to themselves on an individual scale, but taken collectively are complicit in destructive systems. And I've seen things written about Eichmann and this idea of like little Eichmanns being called like someday they will build monuments for us. Like this idea that you think in your head that like what you're doing is something good, sort of, because of being so complicit in a system that you can't see overall is actually like a destructive or evil one. So I think it does make sense that there's that connection, although I don't know if it's like that direct exactly, but I could see that because like it seems to be sort of about the struggle to try to live a good life. You know, he says, all things are so bright and spiritual. These seeds are growing in extraordinary colors. I'm convinced, even I believe that I have grown something. It's cased in light. So it's like, whether you want to read that as somebody who's like convinced themselves that they're doing something good, even though they're like actually part of something harmful, or if that's like the realization of someone coming to find like actual life, and like what it means to partake in like good systems. I don't know exactly, but I do think it's sort of wrestling with those questions of like choosing to do good things with your life and what it means to live a life that people would build monuments for in good and bad ways. I don't know. What do you think?
I've never heard that term, little Eichmanns.
Yeah, me neither.
I think it's easy to find comparisons, you know, modern comparisons to the people, joining together for something they earnestly feel is for the greater good, and are just collectively deceived by the groupthink. And think about January 6th. These people thought that they were participating in like history. They thought that this was going to be some sort of significant experience that they would be remembered for, like American heroes. And no. And to see the kind of damage that has come out of this way of thinking. And I saw something recently, the sort of like inverted pyramid with like the very base of the tiny point of the pyramid, things that are like sort of conspiracies, and as it tapers up and the base gets larger, it moves from like things that are like from the very tip that are verifiably true, and then moving up into getting into things that are like not verifiable necessarily, but like don't do any harm, like are pretty harmless. And then you get to, up to like the Holocaust denial, the QAnon stuff, and like things that are like actively detrimental to the ways that people are choosing to think and harm themselves and other people. There's a I don't know exactly what the song is about, but kind of going off what this initial quote, kind of where my mind goes.
No, I think that makes sense. And I mean, the song is called Hoodwink, which I don't know exactly what that means, but would be very much in line with what you're talking about. Interesting stuff.
At the time, I guess the closest thing would be, I don't know, like the Iraq War would be the most relevant hoodwink of that era.
Yeah. I don't know.
Who knows? By number. It goes so hard.
It really does. This is definitely a top 3 contender for me. This is one that I'm going to be annoying about and ask to hear multiple portions of. There's this so we hear this kind of weird, murky part in this section, but there's this beautiful transition at 2 minutes to like a very different movement of the song. All of a sudden it's like warm and hopeful. Oh, it's so good. So then there's like a get it, Danny. There's a long build in the next section to like a real release. That's the highlight of the album for me as well.
Full release?
It's almost a full release, but then there's a full release at the ending. 3:48, the next part I'd like to hear. Here we go, baby. All right. So that's glorious. But then
the beginning of the song. Okay, sorry, you have more.
No. I mean, there's one more thing I want to hear, but go ahead.
No. Go for it.
Well, so then another real album highlight for me is the song's ending, which is this chanted Japanese translation of Psalm 139, and that's at 440. It's so good.
It's so outstanding.
Ugh.
And just imagine being in a crowd of people.
Oof.
They're all belting this from the stage.
It's so great. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what it is. I mean, we described it a little bit already, but there's something to the idea of like being in a room together with people and you see these people leading something before you and it like goes through all these different like incarnations of like we've seen them perform this like dramatic dark section and we've watched the rise and fall of something and it does this big dramatic build like we heard with that release and then to end with this place where they're like shouting together melodically and like closing this thing together. I don't know, it just feels like this shared special experience.
100%.
And what they're shouting along there is the English translation of the Japanese passages, thou hast beset behind me and before and laid thine hand upon me, which is from the Psalms, like we said, and just feels like a sort of beautiful, hopeful ending after this journey of the song and sort of where it's taken us. So I don't know. I really, really love this one. I've dominated though. What do you have to say?
Yeah. So like the beginning, sort of like dissonant, like horns into the ending with
major chords on guitar.
It's very different vibes and
Yes.
feeling from the start to the end.
Yeah, and I love that about it. I mean, it feels like, we said theatrical, but it's like the same reason why you're so moved by like when you see a play live and it goes and captures all these different emotions and
feels like there's good resolution in the song.
Yes, totally. It flows together with the rest of the record, but it feels like it stands on its own as kind of its own little concept album song, just as its own journey. Many seeming biblical allusions here, apart from the obvious Psalms one. The ending verse being about God knowing you and taking care of you, and then in the song he counts like 1, 2, 3. And then sort of says like commandments almost in the song. Like those parts seem to be different aspects of following Jesus or having faith. Maybe they seem sort of like versions of things that Jesus says throughout the Gospels. And then, he says, close your eyes and feel alive. Did you really feel it in his side? Which is sort of a Doubting Thomas thing, maybe. Again, the idea of like faith in the context of something being hard to believe or being overwhelming, sort of emphasizing the importance of having faith in those situations. I don't know. That's kind of the best I can do. Really interesting though. It's very rich. And again, I like that it's not like, well, this one's clearly about this. I'm like, oh, there's elements of this stuff in here. But it kind of leaves you to put the pieces together in a way.
And I'm okay with that.
Yeah, totally.
Sometimes I'm like, what does this mean? But like, sometimes the words can just sound good and be pretty on their own. And I like getting sort of lost in the melody and not hung up on the words necessarily.
Definitely.
Which is not maybe what all bands want to hear, but
sure,
you can just experiencing the passion and Matt's
Yeah.
voice and everybody else's voices, that to me carries so much.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I feel similarly. I know a lot of the words just because I've listened to it so much, but it's never like I'm gonna sing that catchy melody. It's more just like, the words take you on a journey. And if there are like catchy moments here, they're in like another language or whatever. So but you know which song I feel even better about?
Dokuisi House with Face Covered.
That's right. Oh baby.
My body is ready.
I don't know, just a lot of different notes. They're not really doing it. Oh, hold on. No, they're kind of doing different things. Wait a second.
Oh, it's picking up a little.
They're all playing together. Come on, Danny. Hit us with that riff. Oh, it's so good.
With face cover, leaving open the door. That night in muddy water, the blossom unfolds as a beautiful flower, a beautiful flower.
We'll get there, John. We'll get there in a second.
We will. Oh, it's so good.
This is my number one.
Yeah, mine too.
Yeah.
So good.
Yes.
It's so satisfying.
Yeah.
As that glockenspiel rhythm comes together and takes shape. And then that opening riff is just an all-timer. The 7/8 time that's established as the it's just like, whoa, this is not something you hear often. So I'm on board, but then the hand claps come in, and then that building cymbal into stomping and toms and horns, and I'm just completely fully on board in the first minute of the song.
Yeah. And that the fluttering kind of trumpet, I think it's trumpet. I don't know if it's trumpet or trombone.
There's definitely trombone in there at some point.
Yeah. But there's like some sort of
yeah, that's a trumpet. Yeah, that's trumpet.
That's like it's a thing that I have come to associate with Sufjan.
Yes, totally. This feels very Sufjan adjacent.
Yeah. And I love it.
I love it too. But then it drops out to just voice and piano.
It's next level.
It does, which we heard some of there. But this, oh Hannah, well, we got to hear some of that.
We'll get there.
Here we go. Oh Hannah, oh Hannah, So good.
Ugh.
Oh man, I love it so much.
Fucking satisfying.
It really is. It's just like there's so many awesome contrapuntal. Is that contrapuntal? Like where there are two independent melodic lines happening simultaneously, vocally on this album, and like anytime there's one of those like, so the ohana with the Japanese under it, and then like coming together, just like, I love it when two distinct rhythms are overlaid on top of each other in this way that like comes together in such a satisfying way.
I think the early 2000s we were all primed for that.
Yeah.
So many like emo bands were doing that shit too. Like,
yeah, for sure.
Like Taking Back Sunday and Brand New, and like all these bands that were like having like 3 separate parts, like going over the top of each other and just layered.
They talked about sometimes being on bills with like essentially emo bands and kind of being like, we don't really fit with this. Like it makes sense that they were sort of lumped together sometimes, but Anathallo just its own thing. So there is some context for like you're saying the early 2000s being like, similar ground, let's have them do a bill together, but they would stand out among those other bands also.
Yep. For sure.
Thematically here, based on the poem With Face Covered from the book Japanese Peasant Songs, the central theme of that poem and the song feels very in line with the theme of the record, which is like this beautiful flower growing out of muddy water, the idea of beauty coming from something that's seemingly dead or dirty or forgotten, and this rebirth that comes from that. They also, during that part where it drops out and it's just Matt and piano, the rest of the band would like drop over, like kind of collapse the top half of their body and then slowly come back up like flowers blooming, which was just always so fun and great. I love them. And we should say this song was in an American Express commercial that ran during the Oscars. So good for them. Get that bag, get your money. I was very thrilled to start hearing this song on huge national TV campaigns.
So it makes me wonder how this sort of thing gets picked up.
Yeah.
Who in the like A&R like is like, all right, so there's this band out of Michigan. Who's pitching this? Who is like, I know that's like someone's job, but it just there are like people in suits in a boardroom listening to this and being like
pigs in a pen. Sorry. Can't not keep dropping Lonely Island references in the middle of this.
Yeah, they're in the boardroom. They're boiled goose.
Not enough boiled goose references in this record.
Boiled goose.
Yeah, I heard that with another song we'll get to that ended up in an ad campaign that it was like some director from like New Zealand was doing the commercial and happened to have heard them and was just like, hey, would you want to do this? And they were like, yeah, that would really help us actually. So I don't know. I mean, I've thought at different points that I would love to be a music supervisor for movies and TV and stuff, because you're just listening to everything and just like indexing like, oh, what would be cool for this kind of project. So I love the idea that somebody's just pouring through kind of independent releases and be like, this would be cool for like a a campaign related to like themes of longing and transcendence or something. I don't know.
When I think of longing and transcendence, I think of American Express.
I mean, I don't know. I just mean like the vibe that they're trying to capture in that with those campaigns. So yes, maybe it's gross, but I do appreciate that there's somebody somewhere that heard this and was just like, oh shit, let's like give these guys some money.
Glad they did.
Yep. Good one. We're just playing the whole song. Ding, 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 ding.
Really do. You know, we haven't called out the bass much.
Ooh, I love that bass.
We've called out a lot of the other stuff, but like, I feel like the bass is oftentimes the unsung hero.
Yes,
because it's not as like in your face as the hand claps and the glockenspiel and the shouting and all that stuff. But the bass is there, steady, holding it down.
Props to Seth, because I think he does. I'm speaking as a bass player, what a lot of true bass players should do, and I am like not able to do, which is come up with a complete independent melody as a bass line that like complements the rest. I just find it really hard not to basically follow the melody of the guitar when I'm writing songs together. And his bass is doing what everybody else is doing, which is just like its complete own separate thing, which works together. But these little flourishes that he'll come up with, it's just a bass line all on his own that doesn't have to do with anything else that's happening. I'm like, that's so cool to hear that in your
fucking jazz,
mind.
Bro.
That's jazz, baby.
That's that's what Matt Joint would say at the beginning of every show. He'd be like, "Hey, it's fucking jazz,
it's
baby,
fucking jazz, baby."
You know how Matt talked.
So the fedora on and kind of cigarette between his
smoking
bass
cigarettes.
strings. Yeah.
It's dark, and then a spotlight shines on him, and he's like,
"That's jazz.
It's fucking jazz, baby." And he does the jazz hands, flicks the cigarette into the audience, starts hand clapping.
We are not even halfway through this record yet, by the way.
Yes. Hanasaka
You got it.
Okay. Hanasaka Gigi.
Yes.
4, a great wind. More ash.
Yes. Hear that bass?
So sick.
Yesterday the land went dry. I sprinkled ash of my neighbor's urn over the yard. And doo-doo, and doo-doo, and doo-doo, and doo-doo, and doo-doo, and doo-doo. Sprinkle them, the hope that should I could have a pie wrench, I would find her buried in the ground between the grass and growth. Instead, the earth skin cracking, and a great wind, more ash, slivers of the ground burning in the eyes of ones who stand there, a great wind, more ash, slivers of the ground burning in the eyes of ones who stand there.
This is my number 2.
This is your number 2, and this is my number 3.
So we have the same 3 songs.
Means we have the same 3, but as you're saying it's your number 2, I'm like, I might have fucked up. This might be my number 2, and Hoodwink's my number 3. I don't know. The point is, this is the closest we've gotten to the same top 3 in a very long time, which is interesting because I wasn't really sure.
Said it was interesting.
where we'd land, but because they're all great for me and so many of them could have qualified. Right. But I think once I thought about it, I was like, yeah, these 3 are the strongest. So I guess maybe that's true for others, that they would agree with ours. But I don't know. I'm going to waffle on this a little bit because I could definitely, this song absolutely rules. So it very easily could be my number 2. So I don't know. I guess I'll stick with mine, but let's say very close to being the exact same top 3. Yeah. So this is a 4-part song, but the last part is presented first on the record, which is I said it was interesting. So we hear the ending of the story first, but like musically, it makes sense the way that they decided to structure these. I don't know. I wonder how that came to be. Like, did they write it out in the 4 parts and then decide it works better in this order, or was it like they wanted, like they started with the ending? I don't know, but like I think it works. It flows together so well thematically on this record, even though the story is kind of told out of order. But I love just this crashing drums, great guitar line in the opening, that little synth line that comes in. It's like so great. And then obviously what we heard by the time the stomps and the claps that come in with the background vocals, the ooh into yeah. Like I'm just like, okay, well, top 3. So good. Just really, really satisfying builds and releases again here, both dynamically and melodically. Just what a great song.
Well, we need to get to the end too.
Yes, let's hear it.
Long ago, when it all began, the dawn would dig the ground and whisper massacre. To the guardian by your hand, this bay caught away, this bay caught away, this bay caught away. Behind your house, caught away for coins. Behind your house, caught away to the behind your house, caught away for coins. Behind your house, caught away to the buried.
It's so good.
And we haven't even shouted out that fucking drum intro. So
Amazing.
good.
Yeah.
So good.
I love that.
And then it just keeps going nuts throughout
it
that.
does. I love that it doesn't start with the downbeat of the guitar, but like the full let's do fills for 10 seconds. It's so good. So this would be the moment to kind of talk about what the central story at this of this whole record is. Which at first I just like wrote it all out, and then I was like, I'm gonna try to summarize. I do think it's important to like know what the folk tale is at the center, because I think it makes the whole thing make a little more sense. So it's this traditional Japanese folk tale, The Man Who Made Dead Trees Bloom, about a man named Hanasaka Jiji. So there's an elderly couple with this beloved dog who would dig in the garden and find gold coins. And then the jealous neighbor Hanasaka Jiji borrowed the dog and made it dig. But when he did, the dog found only bones. So he killed the dog and lied to the neighbors about how it happened. And the couple buried the dog under the tree where they found the treasure. The dog owner then dreamed that the dog told him to chop down the tree and turn the wood into a bowl for rice. So he did in real life. And when he used the bowl, the rice turned into gold. So then the neighbor borrowed the bowl, but for him, the rice turned into foul-smelling berries. So he smashed and burned it, and the wind blew the ashes around. So that's kind of the first half, and a couple of the songs address that. And then the dog owner has a dream where the dog told him to take the ashes and sprinkle them on dead cherry trees. And when he did this, they came into bloom. A daimyo or feudal landlord saw this and gave them gifts. And when the neighbor tried to do so with the ashes, they blew into the daimyo's eyes, and the neighbor was banished from the village. I remember writing an article for Sojourners magazine when I worked there about Anathallo, which I would kind of be like embarrassed to go back and read at this point probably. But I remember this line that I wrote in the article because it sticks with me so much, where I said the album is fertile ground for meditation on practicing resurrection. And I still feel that way when I think about it now, because like I think there are allusions throughout to the resurrection story, in the sense of like Jesus also being the man who makes dead things bloom, but also like what we can take away from that kind of story of blossoming from ashes in general, and how we can apply that to like how we live into the societies we're part of, versus like the selfishness and greed of the neighbor. So practicing resurrection in the sense of okay, we take this idea and we try to make good things out of, seemingly dead situations, as opposed to trying to like capitalize on an opportunity by prioritizing yourself and your greed over like the collective good. That's kind of how I see that story and how it applies to like all the songs across the record. Even if it's like a specific story in these few songs, I feel like it goes across everything that they talk about on the album.
Yeah.
Thoughts?
Well, I do think few people know that this is actually the story that inspired John Wick. Kill the dog,
Kill this dog.
Kill his dog, and he's like, this is how it all started.
Yeah, the neighbor sprinkled the ash on cherry trees and then blew them all away.
I'm gonna need a gun. Yeah, I'm thinking I'm back.
He's thinking the dog's back. Yes, great comparison.
I love that. I as somebody who doesn't know that entire that story, I do think that's a beautiful story. Do you know what era that's from, or like what, when that was first written?
I want to say like 13th century. I think it's like very old, but I could be wrong about that.
Yeah. The more things change, the more they stay the same.
Right.
Think about like, oh, here is a thing that my neighbor has. Let me try and use it for my own selfish gain. And then when it doesn't work, I destroy it so no one can have it.
Yep.
What a piece of shit.
So it's an old Japanese folktale, but it was collected first in 1871. So I don't know how old the actual story is, but at least these collections, there are a few different ones, and that all seems to be 19th century. So I guess a lot later than I thought, but still, like it feels like an ancient story that is applicable for hundreds of years afterward, regardless, as you're saying. So
yeah,
great stuff. And then we get to the first part of the story in the next song.
Yes, Hanasaki Gigi 1: The Angry Neighbor.
Ugh, so good. So good.
So good. The piano on, like, as we've said, there's so many virtuosos and so many talented people in this band that I could sing the praises of any particular musician on any given track. And sometimes there's certain elements that jump out to me more than others. And I think the piano, for whatever reason, just sort of jumps out to me.
Yeah.
This track. It's just very beautiful. And, when other things are kind of going nuts in the cymbal or the hi-hats going nuts, and then the piano is just holding it down, this very beautiful melodic.
Totally. Yeah, those ones where Matt would be on the piano had like their own distinct vibe, because I feel like it sort of lends to the almost like not musical theater, but like the theatrical experience we're talking about, where he's just like front and center with this piano and kind of directing the song in that moment through being on piano. Like I remember they would speed up or slow down certain songs where he was leaning on piano to kind of vary it up for different shows. And this is one of them where he would kind of play around with that. And there's a part in a little bit where they get to they're talking about the dog digging up stuff, and instead of finding coins, he finds slugs and bugs and slugs and blah.
Yeah.
And I remember them singing that live and people laughing because they leaned into the kind of the theatricality of that part.
Yeah.
So it was just such a fun one. I remember movements where they'd stop and start here. This is definitely a top 3 contender for me. Love that vocal opening.
Every song. This could
well,
be,
I mean, I'm sorry. It's true. It's
I
true.
know. I'm just giving you shit.
This I mean, what a great opening. So memorable. And then the repeated ooh, so catchy. Again, talking about the way that they decide vocally to deliver some of these lyrics, the rhythm of it, where it's a mountain, the riches, the metal taste in my mouth for the riches. It's just so cool musically, and I love how poetically they tell the story here. The story is just told so effectively. We were just talking about this, having the brain to think about what if we sang this part like this? Right, I know.
I don't know how people do that kind of thing. I
know. Yeah, and you have to have a special collection of people who can pull this off together.
Right.
I always wonder about this though, with such specifics. I assume it's one person who comes in, maybe usually Matt, I don't know, who's just this is the weird melody we're doing, and everybody just gets used to it and gets on board. Or if it is more collaborative, and they're well, what if we did this part like this? I don't know, but I love the idea that there's so many complex things going, and they're all just perfectly in sync with how to execute that together. I assume it took a lot of practice. But I just, the way the song, again, theatrically sort of builds and then slows down and then speeds back up. These movements within the song are so cool. And this one is, the opening of the story told from the selfish neighbor's perspective. I don't know. It's a really cool one.
Agreed. Fuck that guy, though.
Right?
Inu, parentheses, howling.
Another instrumental here, mainly. Just vocals and organ again. Kind of like the first track. Another sort of mood-setting song. It's only a minute long.
Cool, effective.
Yeah.
Dark.
I think the first track, it kind of serves to be a mood setter. There's 3 songs on the record that are just kind of instrumentals and are more sort of mood setting, and they sort of set the pace for the next section, I think. And this one, I think it fits in with the pace of how they broke up the Hanasaka Jiji story. The howling, and the sound of the vocals. Could it be the dog howling in death? Could it be the couple howling in agony over the dead dog? Could it be the sound of the wind blowing the ashes or the spirit of the dog? I don't know. But again, it feels very theatrical, and I could see this being, the score of a play that's transitioning between scenes or something that's being played. That would make sense. So it feels a little bit like that to me.
Hanasaka Jiji 2, floating world.
I lay still in the Fahrenheit. Oh, the grass burning back, black and ash, a cold some rustling the trees. let them go. Silent into the ground where all things may work. Of coming back, of getting back, of coming back.
I really wanted to get to that part.
It's a very important part.
Very Tom Waitsy.
Very Tom Waits. I wrote the same thing
I
down.
love it. I love that part so much. But I'm wondering if Matt was listening to a lot of Jeff Buckley during this era, because
yes,
that beginning part is so
totally.
Jeff Buckley, and I'm
the guitar and the vocal
so into it. The falsetto and the vibrato falsetto situation he had going on is so Jeff Buckley.
You're saying a song that transitions from Jeff Buckley into Tom Waits. Like, no wonder I love this so much.
I know, right?
And how does one song encompass those?
I don't know how it works.
Disparate elements. Yeah, I love that. It's so mournful and pretty. Yeah, and then we're in the junkyard all of a sudden. It's like,
we're in the carnival junkyard.
Yeah, just stomping minor chord groove with like funky horns, like like a theremin shows up. It's so good. And then it's back to mournful and pretty. And then we close again with like the wild carnival vibes. And then it gets this cool ending with just the horns from that part, which was another fun part to watch live, where they were just like doing the horns, conducting all on their own without any other elements, and just kind of kept going. Great song, really cool. As far as like, the name and the theme here, Floating World, the titular track, I think we're talking about, the smoke from the ashes rising into the air. He says, lifting to the air, the floating world, to let them go silent into the ground, where all things make work of coming back. Again, that theme of death and rebirth. And I love that idea of like, in the ground, all things make work of coming back. Like it's our sort of work to, again, kind of practice resurrection in whatever way that might mean for you. But
plants die and turn to soil and then grow new things. Dead animals decompose, become part of the ground as well. It's all part of the whole system.
So cool. I love it so much. And I'm happy that we get to go to the junkyard as part of that.
What's he building there?
And I swear the dog died that day.
The Bruised Reed.
Are you a bruised reed, smoldering flax? Are you a broken branch? Oh, do you love them? Do you love to forget like I do? Oh, like I do, like I do, oh, like I do.
Little waltzy thing going on there.
So cool. This would probably be Guess what? It's a top 3 contender. No, it's probably like my number 4. I feel like this is just outside. I really, really love this one. This is one where like I again tried to count the different movements within the song, and I think there's 10.
Okay.
This first part, like very propulsive, but like a kind of a searching melody.
Mm-hmm.
Second part, we were just hearing slows down with just the horns guiding this new waltzy time signature you're talking about, and then it pinks back up at a slower pace. Then it slows down again with just a piano and voice, and then the whole thing builds back up in a really satisfying way. There's like this long dissonant build, and then the piano cuts back through it with these gang vocals. If we could hear that part, I love that. That's another kind of favorite part of the record. 348.
Da 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 da
I love it so much. Cool, weird bass chords out of nowhere.
Love that. Love it. Love it. Love it.
I could listen to the rest of that so easily, but just go listen to it. There's these like, you know, we hear those jaunty horns and piano, and then this like soaring guitar comes. But then it closes you out on like the searching sound again. I just really love every twist that the song takes. It's so fun to follow.
Anathallo is an exercise in the slow burn.
Yeah, totally.
You don't, there's not like always an immediate payoff at it. Like there's the build up, and then there's the release, and then there's like, you know, the cool down, and then something can build back up again. And you're just like, oh shit.
Yeah.
It's
often like the last 30 seconds of a 6-minute song where I'm like, oh, this is so cool. I thought I knew where we were headed.
Yeah.
So
fucking wrong, bro.
Yeah, that's right. Lyrically, the bruised reed, based on Isaiah 42. A bruised reed he shall not break, and a smoldering flax he shall not quench. In faithfulness he will bring forth justice. Essentially, God won't brush aside the bruised and the hurt, but will set things right, and had in mind to bring redemption to the people in the land. He also says in the song, one will sift as wheat, but one has come with robes. And I believe that's an allusion to, like, in Luke 22, Jesus talks about how Satan wants to sift us like wheat, or to shake our faith. And the lyrics here counter that with Jesus in a robe, which I assume is a reference to salvation. So it's kind of like, again, this dichotomy of like somebody who comes to destroy versus somebody who comes to save. And then it closes with this interesting, this is when the like, when I speak, I cough them out. When I speak, I cough them out, gather them up in my arms, and swallow them back down, which again, to me, I think is like tying together the themes of the album of like saving, of giving to the land, and the land giving back to us, creating land, the land dying, life coming back to the land, the cycle of redemption. I assume it's sort of like God speaking in that part. I don't know. I just find so much to chew on here, and I don't even know if everything I'm saying is correct, but I feel like thematically it all hangs together in a really satisfying way for me, at least as I understand it.
Yep.
Good stuff.
Good stuff. No, what else is good stuff?
It's the next one.
Yuki, Yuki, Yuki.
Oh man, I could
go for
some Vicks. Yeah.
Want me to rub your chest, bro? With a little
yes, please.
A little vapor rub.
Sounds great. This is the 3 minute-long instrumental track.
We're not to the commercial part yet.
No. That comes toward the ending, I think, right?
Yeah. Shortly.
we go. Ding, 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 ding. Ding, 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 ding. Beautiful. I mean, it sounds like a nice commercial song. Like you could hear that and see why it works. But yeah, it's just this like very chilled out instrumental this time. Again, I feel like each of those instrumentals marks the sort of movement of the album and the story, and this one kind of ushers in this last section of the record, which these 4 remaining songs are all like warm and pretty and simple compared to the rest of the record, which this track is too, and it's kind of a good place musically and thematically to end the story. You just got these chilled out vibes this time. Like what is this, a Vicks ad? This is actually a really cool commercial, right? I don't know. It's like floating stuff. It's a nice scene.
Cough drops.
Yeah, Vicks cough drops floating through the air.
No matter what the cold season brings,
oh man,
we've got you covered.
That's so cool.
From our family to yours.
I remember seeing that and just flipping out. Just like, how cool is that? And like, I don't know, maybe if it was a band that I was like younger and didn't have a personal connection to, I'd be like, oh, they sold out. But I'm just like, good for you guys. Do it. And people are loving this this commercial in the comments here. They're like, one of the members was in Fun.
Oh man. Yeah.
So good.
This is all
I love Anathallo. We love Anathallo. I love Vicks. We love Vicks.
Oh, cool. Yeah, nice. This person's like, a Vicks commercial with music by Anathallo, a deal that allows the band to remain free of label contracts and such. Well,
yeah,
sure.
I don't know if that's entirely true, but I guess it gave them freedom to do Canopy Glow in a way that they would not have been able to do without this. So props to Vicks, I guess. I love the mallets and the piano and the warm horns here, and it's just sort of cozy and whimsical, and it's a nice sort of respite among the rest of the album.
It is very cozy.
Feels a little like the Amelie soundtrack, which I feel like was very in at the time.
Yes, for sure.
So I could see why they'd hear it and be like, ooh, commercial potential. Anyway.
Hanasakijiji 3, the man who made dead trees bloom.
Silence when something fell. I saw a smear of red across the neighbor's leg. The land was dry as dead. He crawled with dripping heels, trailing black bits falling out of the mound. Clung to speckled skin and blue blood spider. I saw a bone and nail hooked and hanging from the foot of man. I knew he thought it dead. 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 Now down, I dip my hands and learn into the night. Gather all the parts together and cup my fingers as a cover. Now down.
That's good.
Yeah. Lots of interesting not found. I don't know how you would repurposing items to make them percussive and instruments.
Yeah, they would mess with all kinds of stuff. I mean, this is one of the few songs that stays sort of warm and major chord rooted the whole time. These last few songs are shorter and simpler and kind of a good place to land after some of the like tumult and drama that we've been through the rest of the record. It makes sense as kind of a comforting song of blooming life coming to dead land. Closes with "Come green, the trees to bloom. Oh Hana, buds split open. Wash the heel of man and lick the wound." I just think it's really pretty musically and lyrically, and the Ohana thing is a repeated from earlier, which Ohana means "oh flower," so it's like, this theme of buds splitting open. One thing I meant to mention earlier, which I totally forgot to, is that I haven't talked on the pod yet about how I've decided to mark my 40th birthday by getting my second tattoo ever.
Ooh.
First one I got when I was 18, and now I'm 40. And I'm going to get it next week. So by the time we record the next pod, I will have my fresh ink. But what I landed on, and we've talked over the years a bit about what it would be if I decided to get one, is this, the verse about beating your swords into plowshares. So I eventually did land on this design with an artist where it's like a hammer beating a sword into a plowshare on top of an anvil, on top of a tree stump. And it feels very in line with the themes of the record to me, where it's like taking tools meant for destruction and repurposing them for the good of society. So I thought of that as we were listening to this, and just like, it's a theme that means a lot to me to like try to take something destructive, kind of like what we were talking in the beginning, where it's like, it's easy to slip into being part of a destructive force if you don't intentionally try and think about how your actions might counter that. So how can we, as a people, whether it's, through your faith motivating you, or just as a person in the world who wants to do good things, Tim Keller, to take that stuff that could be used for destruction and instead use it for sustaining life and sustaining people in society. So anyway, feels very in keeping with this record. I'll celebrate by showing you my tat next week. But I love this idea of making the dead trees bloom, and
what more appropriate time of year to discuss this than spring, just coming off of Easter.
Yep.
I can't help but think of like so much conversation and discussion in this record about ashes and and thinking about palms and those being turned to ashes, and the symbolism of that, and
that's a great point.
I wonder about this also imagery around trees, and of course oftentimes the cross being referred to as a tree, and
it's interesting.
There's this part that said, I saw a bone and a nail hooked and hanging from the foot of man. I knew he thought it dead. So I don't know if this is, again, supposed to be more Jesus imagery that was nailed and thought to be dead. And then there's, I knew he thought it dead when I could see it all. The barren closed and dried. The ash took from my palm and danced down white. So I don't know. Maybe there's something there. Maybe I'm getting into my youth group mode and being like, it's Jesus, right? The song's about Jesus.
No, I think Reverend Lovejoy on The Simpsons says, everything's about Jesus. I think everything on this record is about Jesus, probably. But again, you wouldn't necessarily know that unless you were sort of looking for these themes, which I appreciate. But yeah, I think you're really right about this being a very like Lenten collection of songs, which I never really thought about. That like often people kind of do like, here's 5 albums to listen to, for Lent or for Easter or whatever. I'm like, this would make a really good sort of article about this song in context of sort of like Holy Week or that season or whatever. So anyway, good thoughts.
Love a thoughtful thought. All right, we got the penultimate. Cuckoo Spitting Blood.
All night sat on when I fell down in the corner of the field.
Now all I can hear is Jeff Buckley.
Waking with 100 grains, salt stains ringing round my legs. I could not face you. since I don't know my father. I won't be his son. In morning when words rise up like the echo of a stone axe, some demon in me wants to rise up and walk away. Walk away. Walk away. And when I am alone.
It's a beautiful song.
Ugh, I love it. The simplest song on the record, like just guitar notes and vocals.
Yeah.
Again, pretty and warm. I don't know. Feels like again, kind of like a nice, not palate cleanser exactly, but ending after all this complicated movements to something kind of this simple and direct.
Cool down.
Yeah.
Easing out of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Getting to something super mellow, like a cuckoo spitting blood. Apparently, so this was based on a poem from the book Japanese Death Poems, which is a metal title.
Oh,
metal
dude, that's our
song
song. We're going to start a band called that.
Japanese Death Poems. But a cuckoo spitting blood was
cuckoo spitting blood. Japanese.
Apparently, cuckoo spitting blood was used to reference tuberculosis in 19th century Japan.
Oof.
So, a reference to somebody dying of that, I believe, in the song. I saw some speculation that this could be an interpretation of the prodigal son parable, which I could see if you're looking at the lyrics. There's definitely stuff about not knowing your father and how to be a son, and maybe this is kind of the prodigal son in his like despairing moments, sort of pre-reconciliation. I don't know. It's an interesting one, melding these several 100-year-old Japanese poems about death with gospel passages certainly seems in line with the rest of the album, so that could be. But yeah, it's an interesting one.
I remember when I took the gifts, asking you for everything. Throw your name in the well.
Seems
I can see
prodigally.
that.
Yeah.
All right.
Nailed it. Here we are. We've reached the end.
Yes. Casa no Hone?
Yep.
The Umbrella's Bones,
Cool.
which is also pretty metal.
Oof. Crank that fuzz up. Was this show Christmas? Marilla's Forest?
No nightmares to be found on this record.
No.
I love this. I love it.
It's so good. I know I say that.
Such a good ending song.
Yeah, I say that after every song, but it's such a perfect ending. I love it so much. I love the vibe it gives off. Just warm. I love the warm keys and kind of electric piano sound underneath. That chord progression is just like comforting. And then, yeah, those cool drums come in. There's like this interesting syncopation alongside this pretty simple instrumentation and chord progression. Just like, I don't know, it really gives a nice vibe. So this is based on a song in the collection Japanese Peasant Songs. and the lyrics here are all in Japanese, and the English translation is, "The ribs of the umbrella have fallen apart. The paper is also torn, but with bamboo tied together. Do not throw it away, though I also am torn. Don't desert me." And I really love that it closes with, "Though I also am torn," like the umbrella, "don't desert me." It feels in keeping with the sort of like psalm-like nature of a lot of the albums, like this idea of God not forgetting broken or damaged things. Which, not to say like the we're all just broken, but like the idea more of like, again, how can we take things that have been damaged in the like limitations of this world and be not forgotten, but sort of repaired. So I don't know. I find it a very like moving conclusion to this like complex and sprawling album, to just be this kind of like warm, nice send off. I don't know. I like it a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. And it ends very simply.
Mm-hmm.
There's been so many theatrics and so many things going on at the same time. It's nice to end the album with like sort of a slow down and kind of
beautiful, man.
Beautiful.
Love it. I love this album very much.
This album fucking rules.
Rules. I love this band. I don't know if everyone will love this album, this band as much as we do, but I sure hope they do. Really curious to hear folks' thoughts on this. Like if they were sort of new for you, you didn't know them, if you had an experience of being moved by it as we are, or what you think. I don't know. They are a unique artist among the artists we've covered on the pod for sure. But they mean a lot, and it was a lot of fun going through this. Really, really enjoyed it. Let us know what you think at Magnified Pod on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Follow and subscribe to the pod if you haven't already, and give us a rating or a review. We'll read your Apple Podcast review on the show. You can email us at magnifiedpod@gmail.com.
You can leave us a voicemail at 872-762-4763, 872-7MAG-POD.
Can support us over at the Patreon, patreon.com/magnifiedpod, where next week we will be discussing the aforementioned Holiday at the Sea EP by Anathallo. And you can pick up some merch at magnifiedpod.storeenvy.com. Thanks to Small Step Records for sponsoring us. Visit smallsteprecords.com to learn more. And thanks to shout out producer Jason and Bruno at Unoriginal Vinyl for our artwork. Well, I think I hear the voice of the spirit begging us to shut the fuck up. We'll be back to try to make you go astray next week, when we'll have a special guest and discuss Anathallo's Canopy Glow.
So never mind.
Hell yeah.
Someday they will build
monuments for us.
People like me walk out the door before you out into the street.
Hey John, can you pass me my chain?
Yeah.
I need my.
Here it comes.
All right.
How could I let you go in delight? In delight.
The sweet bass notes. Yeah, baby. Honestly, kind of rude of them not to reunite now and let us shout along to that live.
Oh my God. Yeah. So we're going to spend all of next week just berating Danny. Like, I know everybody is sort of like dispersed around the country, but like.
And we got a lot of folks in Chicago here still from the band, I believe.
Is Matt still in
Matt's
Chicago?
here. Not only is Matt here, he's doing a lot of really interesting. I think he does like
What did you say?
I said it was interesting that he's doing like a lot of music scores and film stuff, but he also sort of led this like bootleg Brandon Johnson t-shirt campaign. I don't know if you saw this all on social media, but there was like
I did not.
this whole I think he was really involved in the Brandon Johnson campaign, which by the way, hell yeah, Chicago. Thank you for doing something right for once.
I know. Oh
Actually
my God.
excited about this mayor.
Going from a fucking cop to this guy. I'm so excited for you guys.
Very exciting. And yeah, Matt was involved with the campaign, and he there was this kind of famously embraced by the campaign like bootleg t-shirt effort that they were into, where it's like different artists did different designs boosting Brandon's campaign, and I think he sort of coordinated that. So anyway, still seems like a very interesting dude.
Yeah.
Interesting stuff going on out there. Yeah, we'll take the temperature of where folks are at next week and see what's going on. But what a fun time.
For more shows like this one, visit rockcandyrecordings.com.